Rain hit the glass facade of Crown Meridian Bank in thin, disciplined lines. Inside, the lobby glowed with warm marble and quiet wealth. Security had already decided he didn't belong. That was the first mistake. The second was laughing. "This area is restricted," the head of security said, stepping in front of the velvet rope that separated retail clients from private banking. His badge read, "Dawson." His tone read final. The man in the dark coat stopped exactly 2 feet from the rope. Not defensive, not irritated. Calm. "I'm here regarding vault access logs," he said evenly. Dawson smirked. "You and everyone else. Private clients only." "I'm not a client." That earned a small chuckle from the junior guard to Dawson's left. Rain tapped harder against the glass. A woman at the teller counter turned subtly, sensing friction. Dawson crossed his arms. "Then this conversation is over." The man studied the bank's interior quietly, the gold-lettered slogan etched into the marble wall. Integrity secured. He nodded once. "Then let's restart it properly." Dawson stepped closer. "Sir, you don't get to reset my instructions." "I'm not resetting them," the man replied. "I'm testing them." A pause. That word landed wrong. "Testing?" Dawson said, voice sharpening. "Yes." The man reached into his coat slowly. Dawson's posture tightened. A leather folio emerged. No branding, no insignia, just worn edges and clean stitching. Dawson held up a hand. "If that's not client ID, you can stop." "It isn't?" The folio opened halfway. A matte black credential card slid into view. Minimal. No decorative seal. Just a small federal emblem most people didn't recognize unless they were trained to. Dawson wasn't. He frowned. "What department is that supposed to be?" The man closed the folio again. "You tell me." Behind them, a private banking associate whispered into her headset. Upstairs, someone answered. Dawson straightened. "Sir, if you're federal anything, you schedule through compliance." "I did." "With who?" "Board liaison." "There's no liaison scheduled today." The man tilted his head slightly. "That's because I didn't request permission." The junior guard shifted uncomfortably. Rain stopped. Silence pressed against the glass. Dawson's jaw tightened. "You're disrupting operations." "I'm standing still." "You're escalating." "No," the man said softly. "You are." Phones began lifting discreetly from waiting customers. Dawson noticed, and that changed the temperature. He stepped forward, lowering his voice. "You can walk out calmly, or we escort you." The man's expression didn't change. "Before you make that decision," he said, "call upstairs and ask one question." Dawson exhaled sharply. "Which is, ask them if the Federal Oversight Division has arrived." The junior guard blinked. Dawson didn't, because he had never heard of it. "There is no such division," Dawson said flatly. The man held his gaze. "That's interesting." "Why?" "Because they exist." And that was when the private elevator behind the frosted glass wall opened. Not loudly, but deliberately. A woman in a tailored gray suit stepped into the lobby, mid-40s, controlled, sharp. Her badge read, Executive Risk Director. She looked at the man, then at Dawson, then back at the man. Her composure cracked for half a second. Not fear, recognition. "You weren't expected until next quarter," she said carefully. "Schedules move when patterns accelerate." Dawson felt the air shift. "Ma'am, he claimed—" "I know what he claimed," she interrupted. She stepped closer to the man. "Mr. Vale." Dawson's stomach dropped. The man nodded once. "Good afternoon." Customers were openly recording now. The woman in gray turned to Dawson. "Stand down." He hesitated. That hesitation cost him. "Now," she added. He stepped back. Publicly, visibly. The rope remained untouched, but power had already moved. "Would you like to proceed to the executive conference level?" she asked Mr. Vale. "Yes." They walked toward the private elevator. No rush, No raised voices, just reversal. As the doors closed, Dawson caught his reflection in the glass. He looked smaller. Upstairs, the board of Crown Meridian Bank was mid-discussion about quarterly lending growth. The doors opened. Conversation stopped. Because no one likes surprises at that altitude. The woman in gray entered first. Federal Oversight Division is on site. Silence. Then, "Since when do they audit banks, huh?" "Mister," Vale stepped forward. "They don't," he said calmly. "They map them." A ripple moved across the long walnut table. One board member leaned back. "We passed compliance in March." "You passed surface compliance," Vale replied. Another member scoffed. "And this is about what exactly?" Vale placed his folio on the table, opened it fully this time. Inside were not only credentials, but screenshots, code extracts, vault access timestamps, irregular, repeated. 3 months ago, Vale said, your vault logging software initiated an override. The risk director stiffened. That's proprietary. So is the access chain embedded inside it. He slid a document across the table. The chairman picked it up. His expression changed gradually, like a man watching numbers rearrange into something expensive. "This suggests—" "Yes," Vale said. "It suggests your vault access was remotely mirrored." Silence. "That's impossible," another board member snapped. "It would require internal authorization." "It had it." The chairman looked up slowly. "From who?" Vale didn't blink. "That's what we're here to determine." Downstairs, Dawson sat in the security office replaying the footage. He paused on the moment the gray-suited executive said the name. Federal Oversight Division. He searched internal databases. Nothing public. Nothing internal. But one archived memo surfaced from last year. Prepare for irregular federal audits tied to multi-city review. He had ignored it. Everyone had. Because irregular audits sound theoretical. Until they walk through your lobby. Upstairs, Vale continued, your vault logs were siphoned through a secondary node. By hackers? Someone asked. No. He slid another sheet across. The header carried a name that tightened the room. Helix Advisory Consortium. The risk director's fingers curled slightly. They consult on regulatory strategy, she said. They embed in regulatory strategy, Vale corrected. The chairman exhaled slowly. That's a serious allegation. It's an observation. He leaned forward slightly, calm, measured. And it's not isolated. The board exchanged glances. How many institutions? The chairman asked. Vale didn't answer directly. You're not the first. The rain began again, harder now. Dawson's phone buzzed. Internal message, security review scheduled, attendance mandatory. His throat tightened. Upstairs, Vale tapped one more document. What you missed, he said, isn't the mirror. Then what is it? The risk director asked. The third layer. Silence deepened. There's a secondary override, Vale continued. Not Helix, not internal. Then who? That's the problem. He let that settle. Because curiosity is heavier than accusation. The chairman leaned back. You're saying we're compromised by 2 external actors? I'm saying you're part of a network that believes it's untouchable. The risk director's voice lowered. Network? Vale met her eyes. Crown Meridian is Node 4. A board member frowned. 4 of what? He closed the folio halfway. Cities under review. And there it was. Not just a bank issue, a pattern, a map. Downstairs, Dawson watched as a compliance officer entered the security room. We need your incident report, she said flatly. He nodded. Am I suspended? Pending review, he swallowed. For what? She met his eyes. Protocol isn't protection. The same words Vale had spoken minutes earlier. Upstairs, tension thickened. If this goes public, one board member began, Vale interrupted gently. It doesn't have to. Relief flickered. For now. That flicker died. "You have 48 hours," Vale said calmly. "Full internal access. All advisory contracts, all code repositories." "And if we refuse?" the chairman asked. Vale stood. "Then this becomes a different conversation." "With who?" He paused. "Above you?" Silence swallowed the room, because power always believes it's the ceiling, until it isn't. Across town, inside a steel and glass tower with no signage, a secure terminal lit up. Crown Meridian engaged, helix flagged, pattern expanding. A man watching the screen leaned back. "Move, phase escalation," he said quietly. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside Crown Meridian, the board felt something unfamiliar. Exposure velocity. And Mr. Vale walked toward the elevator again, calm, disciplined, unmoved, but this time, someone upstairs was already making a call, and it wasn't to compliance. It was to someone who believed oversight could be managed. As the elevator doors closed, Vale's phone vibrated. Unknown encrypted source. One line. "You're late." He stared at it, not surprised, just interested, because oversight rarely gets warned, which meant one thing. There was something deeper than Helix, deeper than vault logs, and it had just acknowledged him. The elevator descended. The storm intensified, and the structure was beginning to creak. The elevator opened to a lobby that felt different now, not because the marble had changed, but because perception had. Dawson stood near the security desk, posture rigid, eyes forward. The laughter from earlier was gone. In its place, calculation. Mr. Vale stepped out without looking at him. That was worse. Being ignored after being corrected publicly leaves a deeper mark than confrontation. But that wasn't the real shift. The real shift was outside. 3 black SUVs had just parked across the street. No sirens, no lights, just presence. Dawson noticed, so did the customers near the glass. The vehicles idled, waiting. Vale's phone vibrated again. Same encrypted channel. 48 hours is optimistic. He typed nothing. He walked through the revolving doors into the rain. The SUVs did not move. Not yet. Across town, inside the upper floors of Helix Advisory Consortium, a conference room screen displayed a live risk heat map. Crown Meridian pulsed red. "Federal Oversight Division," a woman at the head of the table said quietly. "Unofficial, unbudgeted, unpredictable, and increasingly disruptive," another replied. "Do we know who funds them?" "No." "Who authorizes them?" "Unclear." That answer bothered everyone in the room. Because power tolerates opposition. It does not tolerate ambiguity. "Initiate containment," the woman said. "How?" She didn't hesitate. "Pressure upstream." Back at Crown Meridian, the board meeting had fractured into smaller conversations. Legal teams dialing outside counsel, risk officers scanning archival contracts. One junior analyst sat frozen in front of a terminal. Because she had found something. A code annotation buried deep inside the vault logging software. 3 characters, repeated across 4 city deployments. EID. She ran a cross-reference. It appeared in Denver. Chicago. Now, here. Not Helix, not internal, someone else. Her pulse quickened. She printed the line quietly, folded it, slipped it into her blazer pocket. Because instinct told her this wasn't something to email. Downstairs, Dawson received formal notice. Administrative leave. Immediate effect. He read it twice. Not because he didn't understand, but because he did. He had followed instinct, and instinct had exposed liability. As he cleared his desk, a teller approached hesitantly. Was he really federal? Dawson nodded once. Something like that. Are we in trouble? He looked around the marble lobby, the slogan, the rope, the cameras. We've been in trouble longer than today? Outside, Vale walked without umbrella, rain sliding off his coat in disciplined lines. One of the SUVs pulled forward slightly, not blocking him, just matching pace, a window lowered halfway. "Mr. Vale," a voice called calmly. He stopped, did not approach. "Can I help you?" he asked. A man in a tailored overcoat leaned slightly toward the open window. "I represent parties interested in efficiency." "That's vague. Efficiency is safer that way." Vale's expression didn't shift. "If you're from Helix, this is unnecessary." A faint smile. "We're not Helix." "Interesting. Then who?" "Let's say we sit above advisory." Vale let the rain fill the silence. "What do you want?" The man's tone remained even. "You're accelerating review across multiple institutions." "Yes. That creates instability. Only where instability exists." A pause. "You're chasing a mirror override," the man continued, "but you're missing the architecture." Vale's eyes sharpened slightly. "Explain." "Helix is insulation," the man said, "not control." The SUV idled. Rain tapped against black paint. "You're looking at nodes," the man continued, "but the structure isn't horizontal." "Then what is it?" "Vertical." That word lingered. Vale stepped closer, but not too close. "Vertical how?" The man's gaze held steady. "Approval authority doesn't sit in banks, or advisory, or compliance. It sits higher." Vale studied him carefully. "And you represent that level?" The man smiled faintly. "I represent people who prefer it remain undisturbed." Thunder rolled overhead. "And if I don't?" Vale asked. The man's tone softened. "Then the map you're building will expose more than corruption." "Such as?" "Funding." That word landed differently. Because funding is leverage, and leverage reveals hierarchy. "Are you threatening oversight?" Vale asked calmly. "No," the man replied. "I'm offering perspective." He tapped the door twice. The window began to rise. "One more thing," the man added before it sealed. "You're not the only one mapping." The SUV pulled away. The other two followed. Vale stood in the rain, still. Not rattled, but recalibrating. Vertical architecture, funding exposure, mapping from both sides, that changed the equation. Back inside Crown Meridian, the junior analyst finally approached the risk director. "There's something else," she said quietly. The director glanced at her watch. "This isn't a good time." "It's about the override." That got her attention. The analyst unfolded the printed code. "EID," she whispered. The director frowned. "What is that?" "I don't know," the analyst admitted, "but it's embedded in all 4 cities." The director's expression shifted. "4?" The analyst nodded. "We only operate in 3 of those vault jurisdictions." Silence. Because that meant something external had touched internal code, without contract, without approval. The director folded the paper slowly. "Delete any trace you access this," she said carefully. The analyst hesitated. "Why?" "Because if this isn't Helix—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Across the city, Vale entered a small, unmarked office building. No signage, no directory. He took the elevator to a floor that required manual code entry. Inside, 3 screens displayed data streams from 4 cities: Denver, Chicago, Crown Meridian City, and a 4th still labeled pending. He removed his coat, sat, replayed the SUV conversation in his mind. Vertical, funding, mapping from both sides. He opened a new query, cross-referenced advisory contracts with political donation records. A pattern began to surface, not illegal, but synchronized. Banks, advisory firms, infrastructure grants, campaign finance clusters, and one recurring acronym buried inside back-end procurement files: EID. He leaned back slowly. "Executive Infrastructure Directorate," he murmured. Not public, not documented, but rumored once in a sealed inquiry 5 years ago. an entity designed to stabilize financial corridors. Stabilize? Another word for control. His phone vibrated again. Encrypted. You found it. No signature. He stared at the message. You're inside, he said quietly to himself, because whoever sent that wasn't in an SUV. They were in the system. Back at Crown Meridian, the board reconvened in emergency session. We've received inquiries from 2 senators, the chairman said tightly. That was fast, someone muttered. Too fast. The risk director spoke evenly. Helix denies involvement beyond advisory. Do we believe them? She didn't answer immediately. I believe they're not at the top. Silence. What is at the top? A board member asked. Before she could respond, the conference room screen flickered. An incoming secure call. No caller ID. The chairman hesitated, then accepted. The screen remained black. A voice spoke calmly. You've been contacted by federal oversight. Yes, the chairman said cautiously. You will comply. That is our intention. Good. The voice paused. Because this review extends beyond your institution. Silence tightened. How far? The chairman asked. The voice did not answer directly. Vertical. The screen went dark. The room sat frozen. Because that word had now surfaced twice. Unrelated channels, same language. Down in the lobby, news crews began arriving. Not because of a press release, but because someone had leaked the unedited security footage, the handshake, the reversal, the name, Federal Oversight Division. Customers whispered, employees checked phones. Dawson, cardboard box in hand, stopped mid-step as cameras pointed toward the entrance. Public collapse doesn't always happen in a boardroom. Sometimes it begins in a lobby. Upstairs, the chairman looked at the risk director. Who else knows? She answered honestly. More than we thought. Across town, Vale stood before the data screens. 4 cities pulsed, but a 5th node had just lit up. Not on his list, not initiated by oversight, activated independently. He stared at it, because that meant someone else had begun their own review. Parallel. Silent. The screen displayed one new line of code, EID acknowledged. Vale exhaled slowly. Not fear, recognition. Because this was no longer about banks or advisory firms or even federal mapping. This was about architecture. And architecture once exposed either collapses or defends itself. He picked up his phone, typed 3 words into the secure channel. Escalate beyond advisory. Then he paused and added one more instruction. Trace funding vertically. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. News crews adjusted cameras. Board members dialed private numbers. And somewhere above all of them, a decision was being made, whether to absorb oversight or neutralize it. Vale looked at the 5th node blinking on the screen. Someone inside EID had just moved. The question wasn't whether the system was corrupt. The question was who believed they owned it, and how high vertical truly went. The 5th node pulsed once, then stabilized. No city label, no institutional tag, just coordinates. Vale zoomed in slowly. Not a bank, not an advisory firm. A federal infrastructure grant office. He didn't smile, but something behind his eyes sharpened. Vertical, funding, architecture. Across town, cameras were now lined across the entrance of Crown Meridian Bank. Employees exiting were being stopped. Is the bank under investigation? Is this about vault breaches? Who is the Federal Oversight Division? No one had answers, which made it worse. Inside, the chairman stood in front of the board. We comply fully, he said. No resistance this time. No negotiation. Because the anonymous call had settled something. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a pressure test. The risk director's phone buzzed. Unknown encrypted source. Stop digging into EID. She looked up slowly. Chairman, she said quietly, there's another layer. He closed his eyes briefly. There always is. In the unmarked office building, Vale ran a financial trace upward. Crown Meridian to Helix Advisory to Infrastructure Stabilization Grants to Federal Appropriations Committee to discretionary allocation clusters. Then, the final jump. Executive Infrastructure Directorate. He leaned back, not because he was surprised, but because confirmation changes posture. His secure line blinked. Incoming call. Internal. He answered. Report. A calm voice replied. Denver and Chicago show identical vertical linkage. And the fourth? Confirmed. Silence. And the fifth node? Vale asked. Pause. That's not a node. What is it? It's a control hub. The room felt smaller. Define control. Approvals route through it before distribution. Vale stood slowly. Who authorizes it? That's the problem. No documentation, no public record, just budget footnotes and infrastructure stabilization language buried in 1,000-page bills, and someone using it to mirror vault logs across major financial corridors. Not theft, not random, surveillance, mapping liquidity patterns. Liquidity equals leverage, leverage equals influence. Outside, the silver SUVs returned. Not to the bank, to Vale's building. This time, they didn't idle. They parked, doors opened. 3 individuals stepped out. Professional, unmarked, purposeful. Vale saw them on exterior feed. Interesting, he murmured. His colleague on the line asked, We compromised? No. Then what? We've been invited. A knock at the office door, measured. Vale walked to it calmly, opened it. The same man from the SUV stood there, rain gone, composure intact. Mr. Vale, he said. Vertical, Vale replied. A faint smile. You're learning. They entered without waiting, not aggressive, but certain. The man looked at the data screens. Ambitious. Necessary. Dangerous. Vale didn't respond. The man gestured toward the 5th node. You've identified the Directorate. Executive Infrastructure Directorate, Vale said. It doesn't exist, the man replied. It functions. Function doesn't imply existence. Vale's gaze held steady. Funding implies power. The man's smile faded slightly. And power implies consequences. Outside Crown Meridian, a breaking news banner lit up. Federal review expands beyond banking sector. That line changed everything, because once oversight leaves a single industry, it becomes political. Inside the boardroom, phones rang simultaneously. Senate offices, committee staffers. Who initiated this? One board member whispered. The risk director thought of the encrypted message. Stop digging into EID and realize something. They weren't being warned for their protection. They were being warned because someone feared exposure. Back in the unmarked office, the SUV representative spoke calmly. You're mapping financial oversight, he said, but you're encroaching on national stabilization strategy. Mirroring vault access isn't stabilization, Vale replied. It's preparation. For what? The man didn't answer directly. Liquidity collapses destabilize cities. So does concentrated leverage, Vale countered. A pause. You believe this is corruption, the man said. I believe hidden architecture is corruption. The temperature in the room shifted, because now this wasn't advisory, it wasn't banking, it was ideological. EID ensures continuity, the man said. EID ensures control, Vale replied. Silence. One of the other men spoke for the first time. You don't have jurisdiction here. Vale's expression remained even. You don't have transparency. Thunder rolled again in the distance. The lead representative stepped closer. You push this higher, and funding committees will classify your division as redundant. Vale didn't blink. Then they acknowledge we exist. That landed. Because unofficial divisions survive on ambiguity. Public acknowledgement forces confrontation. "You're prepared to destabilize federal infrastructure?" the man asked. "I'm prepared to expose hidden leverage." A long silence. Then the man nodded slightly. "You think you're mapping vertically," he said, "but you're still on level 3. Vale's eyes narrowed slightly. "How many levels?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back toward the door. "Consider this your final courtesy." The door closed behind them. Vale stood still, not rattled, but recalibrating again. Level 3. He returned to the screens, expanded the trace beyond EID upward, into discretionary defense allocations, infrastructure resilience programs, emergency liquidity frameworks, and then a blank, a deliberate digital void. He exhaled slowly. "That's level 4, he murmured. Across the city, the junior analyst from Crown Meridian sat in her apartment staring at her laptop. She had not deleted the EID trace. Instead, she had copied it, encrypted it, sent it anonymously to the Federal Oversight Division. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She ignored it, buzzed again. Voicemail left. She didn't listen, because instinct told her something important. The system was watching internal dissent. Back at the bank, the chairman faced cameras at last. "We are cooperating fully with federal review." He kept it vague. Because specificity creates liability. A reporter shouted, "Is this about Executive Infrastructure Directorate?" The chairman froze, half a second. But long enough. Markets notice half seconds. Across financial networks, algorithms adjusted risk exposure. Stock tickers dipped. Helix advisory shares slid quietly. Inside Helix headquarters, the woman at the head of the table closed her eyes briefly. "They said the word," someone whispered. "Yes," she replied. "They did." Back in the unmarked office, Vale received a secure ping. Attachment received. He opened it. The analyst's file. EID trace confirmed. Internal whistle. He stared at the 5th node again, then at the blank beyond it. Level 4. The real question wasn't how high it went. The real question was whether exposure would collapse stability. Because if EID truly controlled liquidity safeguards, public collapse could trigger economic tremors. He spoke quietly into the secure line. "Prepare controlled release protocol." His colleague hesitated. "That could rattle markets." "Yes." "And if level 4 retaliates?" Vale's tone didn't shift. "They already have." Outside, the SUVs were gone. But a different presence had taken their place. Unmarked federal sedans. Different plates, different posture. Watching the building, watching him. Vertical isn't just structure, it's surveillance. He stepped to the window. City lights flickering against storm clouds. 4 banks mapped, 1 directorate exposed, 1 unknown level above it. And now, public awareness beginning to form. His phone vibrated again. Encrypted. New message. "You're forcing level 4 to move," he typed back, then let them. 3 dots appeared, paused, disappeared, then one final message arrived. "You still haven't identified who funds level 5. Vale stared at the screen. Level 5. That wasn't mentioned before, which meant one thing. The architecture wasn't just vertical, it was layered beyond his initial scope. He looked at the 5th node pulsing softly, then at the blank space above it. Calm, disciplined, unmoved, because authority panics when exposed, but architecture defends itself quietly, and somewhere above federal oversight, above advisory, above stabilization, someone had just realized they were being mapped. Vale turned back to the screen. And for the first time, he smiled faintly, because exposure, once started, doesn't stop at level 4.